Olivia always believed she had found the kind of love she once thought impossible, a steady, secure marriage built on trust and understanding. After all, that's what she had always wanted. Growing up in a house filled with arguments and resentment, she swore she would never end up like her parents. So when she met John, a man who was calm, rational, and dependable, she thought she had finally broken the cycle. For 5 years, their relationship had been her safe haven, a place where she could breathe without fear of sudden outbursts or emotional chaos. But what she didn't realize was that love built on stability alone can sometimes become stagnant. She missed the warning signs, the moments when John grew distant, when their conversations became more practical than personal, when his silence spoke louder than words. It wasn't until Maya's wedding, the event that should have been a celebration of love, that everything began to unravel. And what started as an insignificant argument, a disagreement about a dress, became the catalyst for something much bigger. Olivia was about to learn a painful truth. Sometimes, the love you thought would last forever was never as strong as you believed. At first, Olivia barely noticed the distance creeping in. It was subtle. The way John responded with nods instead of words. The way his eyes skimmed over her instead of truly seeing her. She was too busy pouring herself into Maya's wedding preparations to question it. Planning every detail, coordinating vendors, and making sure her sister had the perfect day became her entire focus. And John? He was there, technically, offering help when asked, responding with short, polite answers, but never truly present. It wasn't like him. Or maybe it was, and she had just never paid attention to how often he faded into the background. The shift between them became undeniable 2 days before the wedding, when a simple conversation about her dress turned into something far heavier. "You're a married woman, Olivia, maybe something a little more conservative?" His words, laced with quiet disapproval, settled into her skin like an itch she couldn't scratch. Was this really about a dress? Or had something deeper been brewing beneath the surface all along? As the tension between them thickened, Olivia had no idea that this was just the beginning, the first crack in something she thought was unbreakable. The moment Olivia saw Mason across the room, time seemed to stutter. It had been years since they last spoke, yet the familiarity between them was undeniable, like an old melody she hadn't heard in forever but still somehow knew by heart. His easy smile, the way his eyes lit up when he recognized her, it pulled her back to a time when love was effortless. When laughter came easily, when she never had to wonder if she was wanted. "Olivia? Wow, I didn't expect to see you here." His voice held a warmth she hadn't realized she missed. "Mason," she breathed, shaking her head in disbelief. "It's been forever." From the moment they started talking, everything around them blurred. The stress of the wedding, the tension with John, the unspoken weight pressing on her chest, it all faded. Mason listened, not just out of politeness, but with the kind of attentiveness she hadn't felt in years. When she stumbled in her heels, it was his hands that caught her. When she needed a moment to breathe, it was his presence that steadied her. And while she told herself it was nothing, just nostalgia, just a harmless reunion, the way John's absence had barely crossed her mind whispered a different truth. She hadn't felt this light in a long time. She hadn't felt this, seen. And as the night unfolded, Olivia wasn't sure if she was being reminded of something she lost, or realizing, for the first time, what she never truly had. Number 4. Write more smoothly and creatively. ChatGPT.noi. John saw everything. The glances, the laughter, the way Olivia leaned in just a little too much when Mason spoke. He wasn't the kind of man to cause a scene, but something in him cracked as he watched his wife move through the night as if he didn't exist. Maybe it had started with the dress, or maybe it had started long before that. Either way, the moment Olivia stepped onto the dance floor with Mason, her hand in his, her body relaxed, her face glowing with a happiness John hadn't seen in a long time, he knew. He knew he had already lost her. He didn't stay to watch the rest. Instead, he disappeared into the shadows of the wedding reception, finding an empty chair, a bottle of whiskey, and the quiet he suddenly craved. He told himself it was nothing, that Olivia was just caught up in the nostalgia of an old flame, swept away by the energy of the wedding. But deep down, he couldn't ignore the truth. She hadn't once looked for him, hadn't wondered where he was, hadn't noticed when he left. By the time Olivia returned to their hotel room, he was already waiting, drunk, exhausted, and done. "Where the hell were you?" she snapped. But John just laughed, shaking his head. "I should be asking you that." The accusation hung in the air between them, thick and suffocating, and for the first time, Olivia had no idea how to answer. Olivia had always believed that love was something worth fighting for, that even in its roughest moments, if two people were willing, they could find their way back to each other. But as she stood there, staring at the divorce papers John had just placed in front of her, she felt something she hadn't expected, not just heartbreak, but a quiet, unsettling sense of understanding. "John, this is ridiculous. You're ending our marriage over what? A dance? A conversation?" Her voice wavered, but he remained unmoved, his expression unreadable. "It wasn't just a dance, Olivia," he said, his tone devoid of anger. "Just tired certainty. It was everything leading up to it. The way you looked at him. The way you didn't look for me. I saw it, and I think, deep down, you did too." She wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong. But the words wouldn't come. Because for all the ways she had convinced herself that Mason was just a reminder of the past, the truth was far more complicated. She hadn't meant to pull away from John. But maybe, she had been slipping for longer than she realized. John exhaled, rubbing his temples. "I don't want to be with someone who feels like they have to choose me. I want to be the only choice." That was the moment Olivia knew this wasn't a fight she could win. Because John had already made peace with what she was only just beginning to accept. Olivia sat alone in the quiet of their now half-empty home, the weight of John's words pressing down on her like an invisible force. "I don't want to be with someone who feels like they have to choose me." It replayed in her mind over and over, unraveling something inside her. She had spent so much time convincing herself that their love was solid, that stability was enough, that John's quiet presence would always be there to catch her. But what if she had mistaken comfort for connection? What if she had been holding on out of habit rather than true happiness? She traced the edges of the divorce papers with her fingertips, her heart aching in ways she hadn't prepared for. It wasn't just about losing John, it was about confronting the truth she had ignored for so long. She had spent years trying to prove to herself that her marriage was different from her parents, that she had broken the cycle of dysfunction. But now, she saw it clearly. Love wasn't just about avoiding chaos, it was about feeling seen, valued, and understood. And somewhere along the way, she and John had stopped seeing each other at all. A deep sigh escaped her lips as she wiped away a stray tear. Maybe this wasn't the ending she wanted, but it was the one she needed. And for the first time in a long time, Olivia realized she wasn't just losing something, she was also making space for something new. In the days that followed, Olivia expected to drown in regret. She braced herself for the kind of heartbreak that would consume her, for the sleepless nights and the relentless what-ifs. But instead, something unexpected happened. She felt lighter. Not happy, not yet, but like she had stepped out of a storm she didn't even realize she had been standing in. For so long, she had measured her worth by how well she could hold things together, her marriage, her emotions, her carefully constructed idea of what love was supposed to be. But maybe love wasn't supposed to feel like something she had to constantly maintain. Maybe it was supposed to be effortless in ways she had never allowed herself to believe. John had given her no choice but to let go. And now that she could finally see what she had been too afraid to admit. She had spent years fighting for something that had already slipped through her fingers. And maybe, deep down, she had known it all along. So instead of mourning what was lost, Olivia chose something different. She chose to move forward, not by running back to Mason or chasing a past that no longer fit, but by rediscovering herself. What did she want, separate from the expectations of marriage, of stability, of always being the one to fix things? She didn't have the answers yet, but for the first time in years, she was ready to start looking. Olivia stood at the edge of something new, and for the first time in a long while, she wasn't afraid. There was no roadmap, no carefully laid out plan, just an open space where her old life had once been. And instead of filling it with regrets, she chose to fill it with possibility. She wasn't bitter. She didn't hate John for walking away. In fact, a part of her even understood. He had given her the clean break she never would have had the courage to take herself. And maybe that was a gift. A painful one, but a gift nonetheless. For years, Olivia had believed that love meant holding on, weathering every storm, proving her commitment through endurance. But now she saw the truth. Sometimes, real love meant knowing when to let go. And more importantly, it meant loving yourself enough to know what you deserve. So she stepped forward, not looking back. There was a whole world waiting for her. One where she didn't have to shrink herself to fit someone else's expectations. She didn't know exactly where she was going. But that was the beautiful part. For the first time, Olivia wasn't lost. She was finally free. In today's world, where relationships are often romanticized and social media portrays love as effortless, Olivia's story is a reminder that real love requires more than just comfort and stability. It demands communication, presence, and mutual effort. Many people stay in relationships out of habit, fear of change, or the belief that love should be about endurance rather than fulfillment. But love should never make you feel unseen or unappreciated. If you find yourself constantly justifying someone's emotional absence, it may be time to ask, are you truly happy? Or just afraid of starting over? Sometimes, letting go is the bravest thing you can do.